All right, we're on to the next step. We are going to drop these fins into these holes that we just routed. Again, these are future fins. I'm doing a quad setup, so I'm going to kind of walk through the process. So I'm going to be doing this pre-lamination. Like I mentioned in the last video, if you're using color or if you're not using color, it kind of depends on when you want to actually insert or drop the fins in. If you're doing color, I prefer to drop the fins in after I do the lamination, and sometimes even after the hot coat. But since I'm doing this bottom side of the board no color, I'm going to put the fins in first. Kind of helps with that process. So basically I have my fins laid out, and what I'm going to do is get some resin, mix it up. And when I'm going about this, I want to make sure I'm painting every single edge. So inside these holes, I'm going to make sure I'm going to paint all of that area with resin in every single one. Also, since these are like kind of fresh out the box futures, I like to hit these with some like 80 grit sandpaper, kind of scruffle it up a little bit. That helps strengthen the bond as well. And then when you're dropping these fins in, paint that resin, put the fins in, and you do want to push down to try to get them as far down as possible. You routed these a specific depth, and you want to make sure just that lip, is going to be showing. So these are kind of, this whole little like crease here on the futures, that should be pretty much filled with resin to help strengthen that bond. This is that angle tool that I was talking about. So, you can adjust the angle. These are 6.5 up front. These are in the back. So after I place them, I'm just going to measure and make sure, okay, yep, 3 degrees, that looks good. And, you can tape them down just to make sure they don't lift after the resin. Just kind of depends on, the flow of things, if I'm rushing, if I'm not. But anyway, let's get into it. All right, so got my vent mask, I got my gloves, super thick 7mm gloves, got my resin cup. I'm going to be using polyester resin. This is a poly blank. I'm going to use poly resin. It's 249B. $249A. So that's what I'm using for this go around. And make sure you got good ventilation in the room. I'm in my shed that I built out. So I got this glassing side. Over there is the shaping bay. Let's start mixing it up. When I'm mixing the resin, I would say you maybe put like an ounce and a half in each fin box. So I got 4, I'm going to try to get maybe 4 ounces. Probably a little bit less, but you can always eyeball it. There's also different charts that you can find online. Like Greenlight has a chart that talks about different resin quantities for how big the boards are, how thick the cloth is, and there's also other information about how much hardener you should use, MEKP. Because depending on the temperature, that is very important. I'll definitely touch on that when I start laminating, but when I'm sinking and setting these fins, I have 4 ounces of resin, let's say. I'll probably use 1 milliliter of hardener, so a super little amount, but depending on the temperature is when you use less. So if it's hotter, you're going to use less. We're here in Florida, it's hot, it's humid, it's a little tricky in the shed glassing. It's not temp controlled quite well, So, you know, I do what I can. Anyway, get into it. All right, so I got my MEKP, I got my resin, I got my brush to paint it in. And I'm gonna get that good and mixed up. So I've set my board up on my racks and I've angled the nose down to make these fins a bit more parallel. I like to do that so the resin doesn't kind of sink towards one side. So when you're sinking your fins, you know, try to make sure that wherever that fin is, it's sitting parallel to the floor. Just so that resin doesn't, you know, flow down to one side or not. There's a few other, you know, techniques that I can really get into, but I feel like, you know, those may be for another time. But yeah, short and sweet. Let's dump some resin in, paint this in, and get these boxes sunk. All right, so as you can probably tell, I added way too much resin. Yeah, total rookie move on that one. So now I'm having to deal with just resin spilling out of the box. Don't do that. So I typically don't do this, but you know, way of the road, I guess. Jack that up, especially on the video, so that's perfect. But yeah, so you don't want this much resin spilling out, but it's not the end of the world. It's going to be okay. Still going to be functional. The more resin, the heavier the board. So this will be a little bit heavier in the tail. It is what it is. Luckily, I'm glassing this with clear, so it's going to be fine. But yeah, you know, not ideal. Not ideal for the amount that I used. But we prevail. We fight on. So yeah, so pretty much my angles are correct. So I'm going to let these sit. So basically, yeah, that's going to pretty much harden. Then I'm going to pop these fins out, and then I'm ready to laminate the bottom. Before I laminate the bottom, I'm going to obviously put some glass on, and I'm going to show you what I do for the fins. So I tape off any of the open gaps. I'm using the 233 green tape. I'm going to tape off those gaps, and then I'm going to put two different football shaped 4-ounce resin pieces over each fin box. A lot of these other China boards, you know, they're not doing that. They're just sinking the fins and throwing it in, calling it a day. I'm going to make these boards strong. These fins are going to be strong, so you're not going to be dealing with busted out fins. But yeah, so this is pretty much how you do it. I added too much resin. Don't add that much. And if you do, it's not the end of the world. And the board will still ride. Let's do it.